My name is Dr. Stephen Jones. As an organizational psychologist and executive coach, I love to study what allows people to bring out the best in themselves and others. So join me as I welcome top leaders to uncover the future of leadership. Welcome to the Leadership Secret, where top leaders reveal insights and wisdom gained and transformational moments that have defined and redefined their leadership. I'm your host, Dr. Stephen Jones, and today's guest is a nationally recognized infrastructure and climate resilience expert, Dr. Shalini Vajjhala. How are you, Shalini?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
Excellent. Now, Shalini is the executive director of Pre-Collective, and she has been designing, funding, and financing community-centered resilient infrastructure solutions for more than 15 years. In this episode, Shalini and I will strive to uncover a few secrets of the future of effective leadership. Let me tell you a little bit more about our guest. So, Shalini was born in Edison, New Jersey, and calls Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, her home where she grew up. She is, as I mentioned, the executive director of the Pre-Collective, a team of public service-minded infrastructure and project development experts helping communities and regions make the most of transformational infrastructure opportunities. The goal at Pre-Collective is to help communities build what they need next instead of band-aiding what they have. Okay, that's deep. I'm just going to say. Right? Over the last decade, Shalini has founded and led the design firm Refocus Partners and co-founded The Atlas, an online platform for local government, collaboration, and innovation. Previously, Shalini held multiple positions in the Obama administration, including Special Representative in the Office of Administrator, Lisa Jackson, at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, also known as the EPA, where she led the U.S.-Brazil Joint Initiative on Urban Sustainability. Okay. She's also been the Deputy Assistant Administrator in the Office of International and Tribal Affairs at the EPA, and Deputy Associate Director for Energy and Climate at the White House Council on Environmental Quality. As a member of the World Bank field team, Shalini has worked in Lesotho, Southern Africa, with rural villages to identify gender differences in mobility. She currently serves as a board member of Smart Growth America, the nation's premier organization for local, state, and federal action to advance equity, sustainability, and resilience through better community design and policy. In addition to all that, she has a lovely husband, as she describes him, and 2 kids. And so, Shalini, we are honored and just very, very excited to have you as a guest on the Leadership Secret. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about your passion for leadership and making an impact.
Oh, wow. I mean, it's everything, right? So I walked into my career thinking about my grandmothers who had a big hand in raising me. And both of them were pulled out of school very young, before they were 10. And they never felt like they were smart. And they were the 2 smartest people I knew. And so I think I had an early sense of needing to find where the experts were that weren't the people you'd expect. And so my sense of leadership, I sort of walked into it backward. I was never trying to be a leader. I just found myself constantly needing to lift up people like my grandmothers. And that has shaped a leadership trajectory for me.
That's powerful. Is to not, I'm going to say not worry about the title, but maybe it's not lead with the title. but to lead with and find and listen to people in the community who have lived experience and learned experience. Yeah?
Both. Exactly. Yeah.
Say some more about that.
Well, I think it's freed me up a lot in my career to not be trying to do the next obvious thing, but to follow how you solve problems for real people who know their own lives better than anybody else. And so even as I went through school, it was very clear to me that this was only one way of knowing. And I think my career choices have always been about being at the seams of things. So I started out as an architect because it was this line between art and science. And that has always served me very well, to follow the problems, the things that you're like, something needs to be done here, rather than follow the titles of someone needs to fill this role. And I think it became clearest for me in public service, which for me, the public and the service were both important words there. And I started seeing very, very early in my work in DC the difference between people who wanted to be someone and the people who wanted to do something. And I have always found the best leadership models and the people who want to do something and serve.
Very good.
And they know who they're trying to serve.
So good. Let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
People who want to be something, I'm going to say versus people who want to do something. What have you found as a couple of key differences there?
Oh, well, so the biggest one is whether they introduce themselves with their name or their title. Do they describe their job as their title or the outcome they're trying to achieve? And I think it's very slippery because there are a lot of ladders that people get on, and the next natural step is just who you're going to be next.
Yes.
And it's so counterintuitive. You're more likely to be something useful if you try to do something useful. And I always find this funny because I am an unexpected entrepreneur in my career. Right? I went into public service and I had to start a design firm to stay in public service. And I would often have young people say, well, I want to be an entrepreneur. Like, but what do you want to do? It's like, I want to be an entrepreneur. It's like, to do what? And I think we slip into that more easily than folks realize, which is it's easier to name the thing you want to be than it is to frame the thing you want to do.
Leadership secret, y'all. It's easier to name the thing you want to do versus frame the thing you want to do, right? And effective leaders will oftentimes spend more time framing and thinking about the frame. But you just blew my mind because I'm going, introducing yourself as the impact you want to make. I'm not sure many people go into leadership roles thinking a lot about the impact that they want to make. What do you think?
I don't know. I think it's so interesting because what drew me to leadership was just the necessity of needing to lead, not the desire to call myself a leader. And I think you are right. I think that a lot of people seek out the next right thing. And often that looks like, becoming a manager, becoming a leader. And I think leading is a verb, not a noun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and you're making me think about even the shift that's necessary to talk about, to go from talking about career path to career impact.
That's right. Yeah. This is where I got very, very lucky. And I didn't know this. And I didn't know this going in. This was all the benefit of hindsight. So I have one of these career paths that looks very coherent in the rearview mirror. But I had no idea if each step was the next right thing or not. And And architecture school teaches you to think in terms of your portfolios. What have you done? What have you built? Who was it for? And so your career is a portfolio.
Yes.
And I didn't realize that I took that mindset with me when I left the field and how uncommon it was, where so many other fields, your career is a ladder. You go to law school, you get your entry-level position, you work your way up to partner, and that is not something that was standard in the profession I chose.
Yes.
And so I feel very, very fortunate to have had that latitude early on to define what impact looked like differently. And just know that it had to fit within a portfolio and tell the story about it.
Wow. Talk about transferable skills, right?
Yeah.
Transferable mindset. Even that's powerful. Let's talk a little bit about community, right? And leading in the community. And what are 2 to 3 mindsets or skills that you find important for folks who are effective at leading from a community leadership perspective?
There's one foundational one, and then everything else layers on top of it.
Okay.
And it's, do you ask questions and wait for an answer? A lot of people ask questions and they skip the waiting for the answer part. And in my work, I work on a lot of very technical things where people feel like they have to do a lot of explaining before they do any listening. And I have never found that to work. The listening always has to precede any explaining. And it's because you have to start where people are. And so 2 questions I ask often in my work are, who loses money if we don't do something about this problem? And who suffers? And the overlapping answers of those 2 questions are where we focus our impact.
Wow.
And it's true for anything about climate change. Who loses money if we have more severe storms, if we have more fires, and who suffers? And you never want to wring money out of people who are suffering. You always want to look for who is the motivated beneficiary of this work. And I think the word community, like sustainability, has gotten loose. People use it for everything.
Right.
They hand wave about it. But if you cannot name who is suffering and who is motivated to act, then you don't have a community. And there's a lovely quote out there, and I'm not going to get it quite right, but it's, if you are comfortable with everyone in your coalition, you aren't in one. The same is true for community. You have to find what it is you can work together on and recognize what it is you are not working on right now.
Wow. That's powerful. Because 2 things. One, those 2 questions kind of speak to what equity, right, looks like. There's another word that's loose, right, that means so many different things. But you just gave us 2 questions that could be applied in community and organization, right, to anything. What do you think stops people from asking those questions in leadership roles?
I think 2 things get in the way. I don't think it stops folks. I think a lot of times when you're in leadership, the presumption is you need to know the answer. And so you come in trying to provide an answer or trying to provide expertise. So I think for folks who see themselves as that source of information, it feels like a weaker starting point when it's not. I think the other thing that stops people is they're afraid what they're going to hear back. And that is very real. You hear some really scary things back, and you hear some things that you cannot solve. And just being really open about that. Like, I don't know. Saying I don't know is a leadership skill. And we don't teach it.
That's right.
And it is so hard to do in the moment. It's so easy to read on paper. And it is so hard to do in the moment. Or to say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry this is this way. It is broken. We are not going to be able to do anything about that through this work.
My mind goes to so many people would think about that as losing credibility.
But it's gaining trust.
Bam! So losing credibility versus gaining trust.
If you are counting on expertise as the anchor for your leadership, you're going to worry more about credibility than trust. And in our work, everything we do, credibility only comes from trust.
Yeah.
You do not move money or shovels in service of people unless they trust you.
Yes. That's such a major shift, right? Goes back to reliance on title versus reliance on listening, right? Reliance on title and credibility versus reliance on listening and trust building. Wow.
I'm coming here to tell you something versus I'm coming here to work with you so we can all do something.
Absolutely. Which means I value you as part of the solution.
There is no solution without you. I think we've seen that over the last few decades, right? Like the stuff that doesn't include people or isn't with and for people, you don't do it again.
Yeah. I think about so many people who go into community thinking that they're going to do unto the community, right? That the answers don't live in the community.
Yeah.
Talk about kind of what's the alternative mindset.
I'll share a story about my grandmother.
You got it.
And so I was very, very lucky to grow up with my grandmother in New Jersey. And my family speaks a language from South India, Telugu. And so I grew up with her, hearing all the stories, learning this. I didn't speak English till I went to school because I talked to her so much. And one day she asked me, I was in graduate school, and she said, "Oh, tell me what you're working on." And I was the only one she ever asked that, where she felt like she would understand the answer. And I was working on something just like miserably technical that year. It was, carbon sequestration. How do you take CO2 out of the air and put it in the ground? And I was working on the community side, and I didn't know how to translate it to Telugu. I was like, wow, this is very technical, and I don't want her to not feel smart enough to understand it. So I found myself trying to break it down and describe it as a story. And so I asked her, "Do you remember your coal stove, like when you were young?" She was like, "Yeah, that thing smoked like you wouldn't believe." I was like, "Exactly. So you remember that smoke?" She was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Where did it go?" She was like, mostly went up, kind of stayed in the ceiling, went into the rooms. And I said, "Okay, work with me for a second. I want you to imagine you got a bucket and you catch that smoke." And she was like, "Okay." And I said, "Now walk out into the yard and picture digging a hole and capturing that smoke in there." And she said, "Well, where would I dig the hole?" I was like, "That's what I'm working on." And she was like, "Well, where are you going to dig the hole?" And I was like, "I don't know yet." And she said, "Well, you can't put it over there. That'll go in the well." That's risk management.
There you go.
And she said, "What's risk management?" I was like, "What you just said." And she's like, "Well, why don't they call it that?" That is the leap that I think you have to make in recognizing that if you are truly expert in something, you have to be able to take responsibility for making sure people understand what you're saying, not to say they don't get it.
That's right.
And so we have all these little tricks in our work where we listen for phrases where we're getting it wrong or where other people are creating friction. And so one of my favorite is, "If they would just." Where it's this deflection of responsibility, and someone's always pointing the finger at someone else. It doesn't matter. It could be the maintenance guy, it could be the city manager, it could be someone, it could be, the whole federal government. But it's that, if they would just, that's giving away your power to do something. It's waiting on someone else who may or may not even realize that they're losing money or suffering.
That's right.
And so that's where we really try to walk into these conversations with I think, a different mindset, but a continuous set of reminders to hold on to it, because it's so easy to slip and be like, "Oh, let me just explain this to you."
That's so powerful. It's that make it make sense, right? But again, the word, I have to value you and I have to see you as a valuable partner.
Yeah.
Right. And then right next to title and credibility is ego.
Mhm.
I have to manage my own ego.
Yeah.
Right?
But if you're, I think in a lot of ways, right, if your leadership is fragile,
Yes.
if it's built around only one thing. And that's where I think ego comes in,
That's
is that you have this one area of strength and everything else is, it's a moat of insecurity around it. And I just find that kind of a humble approach to leadership, right, is the one that has been most joyful and most durable for me. Like, I don't want to be the smartest person in a room. That means I'm not learning anything.
That's right. That's right.
And also, I have underestimated everyone else.
Yes.
Like, that's what my grandmothers really drove home for me, as they were just so underestimated, and I never got it. Because I knew how smart they were. I knew that everybody was doing whatever the puppet strings they were pulling.
That's right.
And so it was, I think that's the mindset that has walked me into leadership. And so I find myself startled when I hear things that other people have been taught about leadership. Because I've only learned it through the practice.
Yes. It's so helpful and powerful because, one, to me, that's part of the reason why I created the LeaderSHYFT Secret podcast, right? It's what are some of those secrets that we learn through practice?
Yeah.
Right? And that is not always taught in books, right? What would be one or two of those other secrets that you've learned?
Oh, gosh. See, the thing is, you don't know that they're secrets because they feel so common sense to you. And then you realize, like, wait a minute, not a lot of people are doing this.
Yes.
And so it's only a secret with the benefit of, like, perspective from other people.
Yes.
So I think listening is like a secret hidden in plain sight.
Yes.
I do think there is something around the theater of leadership that has gotten in the way, the performative leadership versus the power building as leadership.
Yes.
And this is a space where I feel like I'm still learning, because I've never been drawn to positions of leadership where you have power over people. Everything we do with my team at Pre-Collective is collaborative.
Yes.
Right? Like, nobody does any of the big stuff alone. If you were trying to remake cities, you need a lot of people to come along with you. And I think we're in a moment in time where there is some secret hidden in plain sight of there's more power with people than there is power over people.
That's so good. You reminded me of one of our earlier guests, Chris Nive, who talked about being a devout listener.
Yeah. That's a great word.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, okay.
And listening for what people aren't saying is a key piece of listening to what they are saying.
Say some more.
I ask a lot of questions about, why didn't you talk to me about this? Like, why wasn't that even on the table? And I think I've learned more and more over the years to spot where people self-edit, where they don't bring something into a room because they think it's not relevant. They think you're only talking about water, not housing.
Yes.
Or only talking about this event. And I learned this from working with tribal nations and tribal elders who just were relentlessly focused on whole people and whole systems. And they didn't live by election cycles. Everybody was affected by them, but there was this depth of wholeness to the conversations that I find there's way more self-editing happening in other places and spaces. especially around leaders.
Yes.
And so you have to get better and better about listening for what didn't come into the room at all that might be relevant, because people have curated things to word you and framed your problem for you as you rise up. And so you have to really recognize that. Who's filtering toward you?
Yeah. Talk some more about the wisdom of elders, the ways you have seen folks who are in those elders positions. You mentioned whole and right as one example. What are some other examples where you've seen kind of elders be effective in how they have led? And I know you have a global perspective and experience on that as well. So yeah.
I've been very lucky in my career to have colleagues of all different ages, which creates some very funny moments. So, early 20s when I was with an 80-year-old colleague who was passionately arguing about something. It was like, well, you remember Kennedy. And I was like, I fold. I most certainly do not. And so you have this depth of time and perspective. But I've found that the elders that I have learned the most from, the ones that I aspire to, are always the ones who are working to be good ancestors.
Yes.
But they also never stay with their own age cohort. They are rolling with, that's the 90-year-old rolling with the 18-year-old.
Yes.
And so they have a depth of time and perspective, but also their fingers on the pulse of so many things are the same and so many things are different. And I think it's why I keep going back to my grandparents. So I'm very lucky. I'm, in my mid-40s and I still have 2 living grandparents. And my kids know their great-grandparents. And so my grandmother is in India and she's maybe 96. We don't know.
Wow.
Like born in the rainy season. We could pin it down to 1 or 2 years. And my grandfather on the other side is 95. And I asked him in the last couple of years, one time, I said, I've only been here a minute. Like, you've been here and seen things. Is this the worst it's ever been? And he looked at me and it was so casual. He goes, no, but it's the worst we've ever known about. And I had to sit with that for a long time. He didn't recall having said it. And I asked him, several months later, I said, do you remember saying this? And he goes, no, but it sounds like something I would have said. And it stuck with me so deeply because it gave this perspective that wasn't dismissive of my question. It wasn't, oh, you haven't seen anything general. It was acknowledging the reality of today, that we are saturated with information in a way that he wasn't as a child. And also, it has been worse.
Yeah.
But this is the worst we've ever experienced and known about continuously.
Absolutely.
And so I think there is a way of being an elder that goes back to that listening. It's not just imparting expertise because you spent more time around here. It is actually genuinely responding to what is coming your way and bringing perspective to the listening.
Yeah. So good.
I aspire.
You and me both. Absolutely. Systems.
Yeah.
And understanding systems, thinking about systems. Talk a little bit about the role of systems thinking, especially when you're working at levels that you are in terms of the community and bringing different sectors and professions together, so on and so forth. Talk a little bit about that.
This is one of those things that I didn't know was different about how we worked.
Okay.
And it was just like, well, of course, you pull the thread, you unravel the whole sweater, right?
Absolutely.
You have to figure out where you're at. I think a lot of people think in terms of projects or things that are more time-bound, and it's because they're reacting to something, not trying to shift something. And in all of our work, we are we are focused on transformation. And you don't make transformation in a fishbowl. You make transformation in systems. And systems are mostly people, right? It's not like the highway system is, nobody needs a highway. Nobody needs a freeway. They need to get safely to work, to school, to the people we love.
Right.
And so I think the way I think about systems is always with that end outcome in mind, which is what do people need and want? What is your deepest need and your highest aspiration, and how do we get those to overlap? And then what is in the way of that and what delivers that? And once you start picking that stuff apart, then the walls come down pretty quickly, and you start to see where, for example, I'm working on things now where flood protection is supply chain resilience. And it's also the difference between that family that lives with mold every year being healthy or not. You could call that a health project. You could call that a water project. You could call that a railway project. But in fact, it is system investment.
Yes.
And so I think by walking in through these big outcome-focused questions and then honing in on where can we make a difference? Where are there motivated beneficiaries, and where can we alleviate suffering with and for the people who are suffering?
Right.
I think you inevitably end up at systems. You never end up at the one thing.
Yeah.
And so I think this might go back to one of those leadership secrets that I never realized was a lot of my job is just English to English translation. And it is making that street tree look like a transportation project, a water project, a health project. And each time it's a little bit different vocabulary to bring people in.
Yes.
So you have to walk folks out of their comfortable vocabulary. But it goes back to what you said of these questions, they are equity. They are resilience.
Yeah.
We don't use a lot of shorthand.
Very good.
And I think it's protected the work in spaces where people want to push back against the language. And I find myself really struggling with this because I think sometimes it's important to use the language and to be loud safely.
Yeah.
But other times it's more important to show what it looks like when it's done well.
Yeah.
And then you can call it whatever you want. It's a know it when you see it. And I always find myself tilting toward the doing over the describing, going back to that early, like, I want to do something, not be someone.
Yes.
And so it's really shaped how I think about systems, but it's also this English to English translation is all about that. Who do you make feel competent and smart?
Yes.
And if you do it at a systems level, people have whole lives. They can talk to you about the mold in their basement. They're not highway planners.
Yes.
They don't have to be flood people, but they can tell you exactly like, oh no, February. And then you're like, oh, perfect.
Right.
That's exactly what I needed. Now I've got a season I can work with.
Yes. It comes to me that what you're describing requires becoming multilingual in the same language.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's exactly it. And creating these jargon-free zones where you don't scare away the people who have the information you need. And that's how you hold on to community, is you take these deeply technical things and make them about the results rather than the plans, rather than the process. And I think we've slipped, unfortunately, into... It's not lazy because it's hard, right? And I think this is true of a lot of government. I have an enormous amount of respect for public servants and civil servants, and especially now at a time where they're being devalued.
Yes.
But I think a lot of people's jobs are around the plan, or the process, or the checklist, or the boxes. And people know when they're not being seen, like, when you're standing in, or you're sitting in front of the healthcare form and you're like, well, this doesn't cover anything I need it to cover. And you still have to like force yourself through that little checkbox.
Yes.
I do think there's a secret to leadership in there, which is if your job has narrowed so far that you are not talking to people about what is most important to them.
Okay.
That hour, that day, that year, something about your job needs to change.
Good.
Or your approach needs to change, not something about the person in front of you.
Yeah. So good. It reminds me of, I heard someone say, when you're talking to a good manager,
Mm-hmm.
you walk away from the conversation, you go, that person's really smart.
Yeah.
When you're talking to a good leader, you walk away going, I feel really smart. Right.
Mhm.
And so the idea of uplifting the brilliance of others,
Yep.
right, is a skill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the whole job.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What else from, I'm curious about your architecture background because I'm thinking about building buildings,
Yeah.
right, requires a certain process and a certain way.
Mhm.
What is one or two other things that you've been able to transfer from that foundation into your leadership?
This is so interesting. So architecture as a field, I think, is so narrowly understood, where you build houses or buildings, but almost everyone I went to school with is now doing things like some are in advocacy work, some are in city planning, some are animators for Pixar, where to imagine worlds that have never been. Like you think about all those spaces, I think what I appreciated most, again, benefit of hindsight, was learning how to have lots of ideas and not get too precious about any one of them. And it was the whole training in the early part. It's like, generate 10 ideas, generate 30 ideas. Okay, now this one thing changed. What are you going to do? And like 9 of your ideas became unworkable. And so you built up this muscle, I think, of not getting too attached, but also consistently being responsive to constraints without being hemmed in by them. Like not seeing you just see the constraints as part of what you're working within. It's the problem definition. It's the framing. So it's back to that, like the work is the framing.
Yes.
And being responsive to what you can do within that framing. And the places where we've been the most effective, like my team, Royal We, is where we have been able to expand the frame and zoom out and ask a bigger question. So where we have someone who comes to us and says, I have flooding, I need to buy some pumps. Can you help me fund and design these pumps? And then you say, well, okay, but what else do you need? And it turns out there's no green space. They've got cars floating down their streets every flood. And that's where we've been able to come in and say, well, instead of a pump, what if we built a park? And made that park work like a bathtub? And then you have ball fields and green space and all these things so that you don't just have to buy another Band-Aid in 10 years, which is the pump.
That's so good. Leadership secret I want to pull out is leaders ask the question, what else do you need?
Well, expand.
Right? In order to broaden an understanding of the current state.
Whole situation.
Whole situation.
Whole person.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm also really appreciating the detachment and the not, and I want to separate that from the not being attached, right? Because you can be attached to multiple ideas, which is different than being detached from any of those ideas.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Deeply invested in the solutions, but not attached to getting there a specific way. So I describe a lot of our work like, it's like coordinating a relay race where you want to make sure you're crossing a finish line that you'd actually be proud of when you get there. You don't ever run alone. You're not going to do the whole thing by yourself. You need to know you have enough runners who are supported to make it the whole way, that no one's hiding batons, that they pass them to each other, and that you actually recognize when people cross the finish line. And so we do a lot of like relay race planning, setting that finish line, pace running, finding batons that people have dropped along the way. And it is such a simple way to think about, hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure projects. They're all relay races at the end of the day. And so we break that down into three things.
Yes.
And it's vision, capacity, and money. Everybody wants to talk about money.
Got it.
They're often missing one of the other two, which is you don't have that worthy finish line. You have that thing that's next on the checklist, the Band-Aid, right? The vision is the pump, not the perk.
Yes.
And capacity is it's like community. It's one of those words that means nothing until you dig into it. And capacity for us is you have to have enough warm bodies in the right places with the right skills at the right time. I didn't once use the word credentials.
So good.
You need skills. And the skills sometimes live in places you would not expect. Like, I've gotten some of the best work done when I've gotten to know the maintenance department.
Yeah.
Or the people in the barber shop who know exactly where the street is unsafe. And that kind of spotting, I think, is where I've grown in my leadership, which is I'm faster at spotting it, at listening for it, and bringing people in that might have taken me longer earlier in my career to recognize.
Yeah. So powerful. It's the looking for answers and insights in many places and spaces versus in prescribed titles, places and spaces. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's why I liked when you reached out. And this whole podcast has been about effective leadership, not just leadership. And I think there's a lot of leadership out there that we could all call leadership, and we don't want to be behind it. Right?
That's right. That's right.
But I think effective leadership is the stuff that you would want to see more of consistently and to see more people doing it. And that can happen at any level.
Absolutely. Let's talk about levels. I'm thinking about a leader who is, let's say, mid-level versus a leader who is at C-suite level. What would you say are one or two of those skills that, and I'm going to say it this way, that's important to add on when you move from mid-level to C-suite executive level?
This is such a good question. It's one that I have to still ask myself on a regular basis. So one of those leaps for me from being a leader within a big system to stepping into kind of a solo leadership role was recognizing what I should not do. And I think it takes a while. It takes a while because you got there because you were good at a set of things that got you there, and then you're not supposed to do those things anymore.
That's right.
And I think it takes some discipline to really ask yourself, what is the stuff that only I can do?
Yes.
And then how do I make sure that everybody else can do all the other stuff? And skill them up and make sure they grow into that so they get better than I ever was at it. But the letting go of what you were good at for what is needed most is so humbling. And it means that you are consistently only doing the hardest things. And so I ask my team members a lot, what do you need from me? It is more that question than like, provide me with this. Because if I ask them what they need from me to do their work, that means they are taking ownership and responsibility, not taking direction.
Say that again, please.
Oh, I can reconstruct it. If I ask people I'm working with, direct reports, partners, what do you need from me or us? Then it means they are taking ownership and responsibility for delivering the outcomes rather than taking direction. And that to me has been the most powerful lesson in going from mid-level giving direction and receiving direction to building skills and ownership.
Yeah. So powerful. And so much of a shift, right? That says, I love the piece around what do I need to stop doing?
Yeah.
And then how do I even define what effectiveness looks like at this C-suite executive level?
You have to do it you have to do it continuously because it changes.
Especially if you're, I'm going to say, the first generation in that space, right? Then
there's no template.
Right.
Yeah. You have to, as much as you ask other people questions, you have to continuously interrogate yourself.
Yes.
Like, what am I doing here? Is this what I should be doing here? And is it working?
Yes.
If it's not working, is it me?
Yes. And a shift from a focus on my intent to a focus on what's the impact that my actions are having on others. Yeah.
All the good intentions. The number of times I have tripped over my own good intentions has been too many to count.
That's awesome. Superpower. What's your superpower?
Oh gosh. I have had people tell me that it is this English to English translation. It's being able to communicate and make people feel comfortable. And I don't know that I feel like it's a superpower, but when I get my grandmother's joy and confidence in understanding something she felt like was not hers to understand, that's when it feels like a superpower. When my great aunt walks in and she's like, let me tell you about carbon sequestration. And they start talking for 2 hours. And then they come back to me and be like, this is a terrible idea. You should stop them.
The direction.
But that's the superpower, is where someone walks out of a conversation with the confidence to engage with more people around the topic.
That's so awesome.
So they turn their back to you and face outward is when we have done our work best.
Got it. Talk about conflict. How much time do we have left?
Yes.
What have you seen leaders do to be effective around resolving, managing, facilitating conflict?
I'm going to answer this question 2 ways. One is something we practice in our team, which is we encourage task conflict. We discourage personal conflict. This is, I disagree about that, not I don't like you.
Very good.
And so without task conflict, you don't do good work. Because then you're just, everybody's agreeing and you have missed this whole set of people that you should have been having conflict with, right? And so I have a set of questions that I keep in my back pocket, which I'll ask in community meetings, I'll ask in closed government sessions or anything. Just, is there something that we are saying that has not worked before? Tell me if I've said anything that gives you hives.
Yes.
Anybody feeling a little twitchy?
Yes.
Or like, have you felt this before? And so we encourage that. And I think that is pre-conflict.
Yes.
So like pre is in the name. But pre-conflict is where you get to separate and guide toward task conflict rather than interpersonal conflict. I think there's another set of things, and I'm still learning, but there's some beautiful new writing and work out there about the difference between good conflict and high conflict.
And high conflict.
High conflict. I like this language a lot. So
Okay.
I am still getting up this learning curve.
Okay.
There are books out there that, and this has been in my podcast, in my ears for the last year or so. High conflict is where you are in the emotional, I hate this, I hate you, and you are a terrible person.
Got it.
There's no path through that.
And is that HIGH high? Okay.
High conflict.
Okay.
And good conflict is when you are trying to resolve something for which you could come closer together. But you're never going to go from like, they're terrible to, oh yeah, I can see where they're coming from on healthcare.
Yes, yes.
And so I think we've done a lot of this in our politics in the country, and politics is not sports, right? Like, you move to Pittsburgh, you are required to be a Steelers fan. And so I grew up Steelers fan.
Got it.
And there is a level of which the wonderful aspects of how we cheer for our sports teams has become how we defend our politicians.
Absolutely.
That is high conflict.
Yes.
That is win or lose.
Yes.
Like, nobody wins or loses education.
Yes.
No one wins or loses economic security.
That's right.
These are things we work out.
Mm.
And if we don't have conflict, we don't ever work anything out. Like, we all know this around the Thanksgiving table, right? Like, there is stuff you just never work out.
That's right.
It just sits under the table every year.
Year after year, yes.
And so I'm always reaching for those spaces and those frames where you could work something out.
Mm-hmm.
But we rarely do it where the high conflict is still the vibe.
Wow.
Because that's where you need some reset. You need some ability to come in and change the frame.
Yeah.
So it's not us against them.
Yeah.
Or winning or losing or a zero-sum game. Like that's where fear dominates.
That's
and
right.
so I just keep bringing it back to that. Are you losing money?
Yeah.
Are you suffering? Is there something we could do to make this better, not perfect?
Yes.
And so I think that is something that's been enabling in my work, is not to make the perfect the enemy of the good.
Yes.
And that also keeps you from over-promising and under-delivering.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these are like, they're trite phrases, but they're actually practices.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That become very challenging when we put them into practice.
Yeah.
Right?
Easy to say.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Talk some more about that idea of leadership as a practice and learning through the practice of leadership versus the theory of leadership.
I feel like you can talk to this better than I can. And it's largely because I don't know that I know the theory of leadership. I've walked into it backwards to try to understand something I don't or validate it.
Yeah.
But I do think the practice of leadership is done well, is bringing people along a journey to a better outcome than they would have gotten to otherwise.
Yes.
And it's so basic when you say it that way. And anyone can do it at any level, at any point in your career, right? It's the make the classroom better, make the workplace better. I think we've just narrowly defined leadership in theory in a way that people feel like it's something you have to arrive at first before you do it.
Yep.
And I think you only arrive at it well if you do it continuously.
That's good. That's really good. Yeah, I've done a bit of work with Toyota and learned the concept of Kaizen, right? Continuous improvement.
That's it. Yep,
Yes.
the 5 whys.
The 5 whys.
Yeah.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right. Absolutely. Wow. So to the leader, the person who is listening to this episode, what is one or two things you would wish for their leadership going forward?
I think if you are listening to this podcast and this episode, it is an excellent sign that you don't feel like you've arrived. And I think one thing I'd want you to know is no matter how far you get, you will never arrive.
Right.
And so that continuous learning is something that's going to be incredibly important. And knowing how you learn and also what your blind spots are, I think is my leadership frontier. It's just continuously spotting that and finding, like, especially now, there's so much information, it's so noisy that
Yes.
I try not to confuse learning for taking in information.
Yes.
And so I think focusing on your own skills would be the second thing I would say, is what skills do you bring? What are you willing to let get rusty?
Yes.
And there are a lot of things where if you put me in front of something that I used to do as my bread and butter 10 years ago, I would have no idea where to start. And I think that's okay, because I think you do have to release some things. So knowing what skills you're keeping sharp, like the knives and the knife blocks, versus the ones you're okay saying, I'm not going to use those again,
Excellent.
would be the two things I would offer.
Very good. Very good. And I'm thinking about your grandmothers. What is one, we've covered so much in our time together, right?
So good.
What is one thing your grandmothers would say about being effective in leading others to achieve those outcomes that you talked about earlier?
I think they practiced it, right? It's why I got to learn it early.
Yeah.
I think one thing both of them would say is to never underestimate the power of stories. And they very much taught through stories. They're both brilliant storytellers. And it never felt like they were teaching, but I think it's something they embodied that it's underappreciated in today's world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it is clear that Shalini and I could talk for hours.
Days.
Days. It has been such an honor to learn from you, to learn with you, to really just unpack being students of leadership in practice. Right?
Likewise.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all for staying engaged, to watching and listening to the amazing local, national, global, transformational leader, Dr. Shalini Vajjhala. Big time. So I'm going to ask you all to please like, subscribe, and comment and share on our YouTube channel, the Leadership Secret Podcast.